Yet another reason why Arkansas is a terrible, terrible place. So if you haven't heard, Arkansas has joined the handful of states that have banned most abortions. This law only applies in cases where the life of the mother is in danger, and it makes no allowance for rape or incest. And some say that advocates of this bill are doing it to overturn Roe versus Wade. If you have not yet heard my opinion of Roe versus Wade, not a huge fan. And you know why? This is why. This is why I am not a huge fan of creating legislation through the Supreme Court. Because this is what happens. Alright, so I'm going to get into my opinion about abortion at the end of this video. I do think it should be legal. So, calm down. But I am not a fan of Roe versus Wade at all. Now I will explain. I think that Roe versus Wade is unconstitutional and is kind of the opposite of what I want the Supreme Court to be doing. I'll be back. Let's make sure this is recording. So, in modern day politics, there's kind of two different veins that you can go down here. Some people are of the mind that if your party has seized control of the Supreme Court, it is your moral duty to do everything that you can to push the policies that you think are morally right. And that's exactly what the Democrats did when Roe versus Wade was passed. They said, hey, abortion, it should be a right. Abortion should be a right, and we have the power to make that happen right now. We have majority control over the Supreme Court, so let's do it. On the other hand, some people believe that the Supreme Court should not be essentially passing legislation ever. I am in that boat, and I will explain. The way our government is set up right now, the Supreme Court has a lot of power, and the legislative branch depends very heavily on the Supreme Court. The legislative branch creates the laws. The judicial branch enforces the laws, and then the laws are real. If the judicial branch makes the laws and doesn't enforce the laws that the legislative branch created, then the legislative branch has no power. Our laws mean nothing if the judges can manipulate them to mean whatever the judge happens to think is right. Before Roe versus Wade, states had the power to ban abortion if they so chose. In Roe versus Wade, a woman sued Texas because she said that it was a constitutional right to be able to have an abortion. If it is a constitutional right, then that does limit the state's power. If it is not a constitutional right, then states are free to eradicate abortion however they see fit. As we all know, the judges did rule that it was a constitutional right. And what did they base that off of? The 14th Amendment, specifically the third clause of Section 1. No state shall, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And that's fucking it. That's all they had. Now, as I'm reading this, I am realizing this is a great argument for why the aborted fetus should not be aborted. If you believe that a fetus is a person at conception, as many people do believe, or is a person sometime during the pregnancy, then it makes sense that they would not be allowed to be deprived of life without due process. This clause is extremely ambiguous and should not have been the basis for this ruling. At the time of Roe versus Wade, there was no constitutional guarantee for our right to abort. And this is one issue where I do tend to side with the GOP, mostly because it seems like many of the GOP judges tend to be a little stricter in their rulings, and many of the Democratic judges seem to believe that it's their moral obligation to use their Supreme Court position to push their own morals. Now, you don't have to agree with me. That is fine. And you can still hate our politicians because this happened decades ago. I think. When did Roe versus Wade happen? This happened decades ago. Roe versus Wade happened in 1970. So that means that it has been over 50 years. 50 years since Roe versus Wade. And after patching up the abortion issue with a Supreme Court precedent, all the Democrats were basically like, meh. There's no reason for us to, secure these rights for people. There's no reason for us to work harder to make sure that they have something little bigger standing between them and their loss of abortion access. What they should have done was immediately started campaigning to create an amendment. That would have guaranteed people's rights to an abortion. And they should have included rights to contraception as well. But instead, they put all of their faith into Roe versus Wade. They could have at least advocated for individual state laws protecting people's rights for abortions. I'm talking Democrats in democratic states. They should have said, let's secure this now. If we really believe that this is a right that every woman or every genetic female has access to, they should have secured it right then. And they didn't. Because they were like, Roe versus Wade will protect us. And it obviously didn't. Arkansas is one of 14 states that has passed sweeping anti-abortion laws recently. So time for some tea. When I was a teenager, I was against legalizing abortion. And I will tell you why. I am religious in a sense. My views differ pretty significantly from modern Christianity, but that's the vague area where I fall. And when I was a teenager, my views aligned pretty significantly with modern Christianity. But I was not ever against abortion because you were a person at conception. The verse that they use, I don't know by heart. I'll post it here. So this verse to me does not say, hey, I'm a citizen of the United States at conception. To me it says, God is working on you while you're in the womb. That doesn't say when the product is finished. The reason why I was against abortion is for two reasons. One, and this is also why I'm against the death penalty, I don't think that another human being should have the right to kill somebody or the potential of somebody unless it is in self-defense or protection of somebody else. Number two, I would love to minimize the ways in which parents can f*** you over. Obviously, snuffing you out before you're even here is a lot of power to give parents. Now, I know that this is not a dream I will ever attain, but that is something that I believe. However, I ran into two problems over the next few years as I learned more about politics and I actually started thinking about what I believed. One, my idea of making abortion illegal never applied to victims of rape or incest. And this opens up a whole can of worms because if you say to a woman, hey, you can either claim you were raped falsely or give birth to this child, you are giving them a direct incentive to do the wrong thing there. And two, and this is something that it took me a long time to learn, when you make something illegal that people think that they should have the right to, it is not going to work. It does not work. I can think of so many examples for this. It didn't work during Prohibition. It didn't work during the war on drugs. It's not working in South Korea right now, where they have more abortions than the United States. And I bet that if we made all guns illegal, there would be plenty of people who got a gun anyway because it's their right. If you believe that what you are doing is not wrong, you're not going to stop doing it just because it's illegal. We all speed, don't we? The letter of the American law is not strong enough to affect our behavior like that. It's just not. And if you don't believe me, take a trip to Tennessee. Go on to one of their university campuses on a Friday and walk into a random dorm room and take a whiff, see what it smells like. A half an ounce of weed is a felony in Tennessee. It is a felony. I used to live in Tennessee, and I know so many people who smoked without a second thought. Making something illegal is not going to stop people from doing it. You know what it will do? It will make abortions extremely dangerous. I have this terrible page of stats I found online. Each year, between 4.7 and 13.2% of maternal deaths can be attributed to unsafe abortion. Around 7 million women are admitted to hospitals every year in developing countries as a result of unsafe abortion. In developed regions, it is estimated that 30 women die for every 100,000 unsafe abortions. That number rises to 220 deaths per 1,000 in developing regions and 520 deaths in sub-Saharan Africa. Following unsafe abortion, women may experience a range of harms, such as incomplete abortion, hemorrhage, infection, uterine perforation, damage to the genital tract and internal organs. People are going to have abortions anyway. The people who are having abortions don't think it's wrong, or they have been backed into such a corner that they're making this decision, and they're gonna make it regardless of if it's legal or not. More people will die. If you are pro-life, more people will die by making abortion illegal. I personally think abortion is wrong. I will not get an abortion because of this belief. I do not hate you if you have gotten an abortion. You did what you thought was the best decision. I am not going to scream obscenities at young women entering Planned Parenthood. That's shitty. And by the way, all of us should want to minimize abortions. Abortions are very expensive and time-consuming and often painful and sometimes a little traumatic. There are things that we can do to minimize abortions, and that is by first off focusing on the root of the problem. Why are women wanting to get abortions? Well, for one, they got pregnant. So, promote sex ed. Promote accessible contraception. Try to avoid the problem in the first place. If you have kids, talk to your kids about how to not get pregnant or how to not impregnate somebody else. And the much bigger thing that we can do is once a woman is pregnant, she is faced with, I think the average is like 10 grand in healthcare costs to have a baby. Be for healthcare programs that help people. Be for Medicare for all. The adoption process is often very long and drawn out, and there aren't that many good parents out there that want to adopt. So, let gay parents adopt. There are too many kids without parents to stand up on your soapbox and yell about the nuclear family. Children need parents. Let gay people adopt. And make adoption affordable. I don't know how to go about this, but it needs to happen. It shouldn't cost anybody thousands and thousands of dollars in legal fees and paperwork and payments to adoption agencies to adopt. And finally, don't be an ass to the 16-year-old that you know who's pregnant. They don't want this to be happening to them. They're probably a little miserable about it. Don't be an asshole. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk, and remember, don't move to Arkansas.